Welcome everyone to the event organized by the Farm Animal Coalition and supported by the World Animal Protection. And in an event today with the title called A Conversation on the IPCC 6th Assessment Synthesis Report. What does it mean for animals? You're welcome to ask any question afterwards, but in the meantime, please make sure that you mute yourself so that it doesn't affect the presenter or other participants. You are welcome to turn on your camera to say hi, or and then to maybe turn it off for bandwidth, but it's up to you. There's no rule here. We're quite open and make it like a friendly conversation. Today we have Vince and Angel from World Animal Protection. They together with me, we will join the discussion. But there's a later part we will have an open discussion for everyone to join to participate as well. The format of this event today, we will first Angel will present. We have a presentation and explain what the IPCC synthesis report means, what included there, and what is missing. And we will have a next part. We will have an open discussion on how we as Asian NGOs working on farm animals and climate change in Asia can take this opportunity to move forward and maybe find solution or discuss solutions to some of the lacking issues as well. And then we will discuss how we can take it into action. So as you know, some of you might have heard the IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they have finalized the synthesis report for the 6th assessment during this 58th session held in Switzerland earlier this year, from 13 to 19th of March 2023. And for some who have not heard of IPCC, it's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it is one of the United Nations bodies for assessing the science related to climate change. It provides regular assessment of the scientific basis of climate change, its impacts on future risk, and option for adaptation and mitigation. The IPCC consists of an introduction and 3 main sectors arranged by the time frame. Let me move the. It consists of an introduction to the 3 main sectors arranged by the time frame. The first section is the current status and trends. It covers the historical and present periods. And the second section is called long-term climate and development futures. It addresses the projected future up to 2100 and beyond. And the final sector is near-term responses in a changing climate. It considers the current international forum time frames and the time interval between now and 2030 to 2040. And today, the AfA Farm Animal Coalition organizes this roundtable discussion on the topic, as you know, the 6th assessment synthesis report and what does it mean to animals. We aim to inform you of the development of the public statement using an Asian lens and farm animal welfare. The objective of this conversation is for us to explain to you the main point of the IPCC 6th synthesis report, and to highlight the role of factory farming and in relation to climate change. We also want to present and discuss with you the solutions for some of the lacking and outstanding issues that was included in the report. And lastly, we will discuss and we'll take action with us and with you all as member of the Asian animal welfare animal protection movement in the continent. Next, I would love to introduce you, Angel, from World Animal Protection. Angel is heavily involved in and keep a very close eye on the IPCC report, and she will be able to explain to us further in more detail what it means of the report. So, Angel, whenever you're ready, please share your camera.
Thank you, Than. I hope you can help me with my slides. Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling from. I'm here today to talk about the recently released IPCC Sixth Assessment Report, synthesis report. Essentially, this will help us to kickstart a discussion on what it means for animals in Asia as a region. So we will only be focusing on the key highlights that are most relevant to us as a coalition. And definitely, if there are people and colleagues in the room who have also followed the process, we would welcome additional insights and feedback from you if you've also had a chance to review and follow the IPCC synthesis report approval process. So Tan has already given a short brief around what the IPCC's role is in terms of driving the climate change science. So let me dive directly into what the report was all about. So the sixth assessment synthesis report, which was released in March 2023, it is the culmination of several reports that the IPCC has already published from the 1998 and onwards. And it provides a comprehensive overview of the state of climate science, including the latest findings and projections. So there have been 6 reports that have preceded this culminating report, and this includes 3 working group assessment reports. The working group 1 focuses on the physical science basis. The working group 2 is specifically looking at the impacts, adaptation, and vulnerabilities, whereas the final working group is really focusing on mitigation of climate change. During the 6th assessment period as well, there were 3 special reports that have also been developed. One is around global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius, and there's a special report on climate change and land, and this is where we've seen a lot of scientific information and mentions around industrial livestock, the role of deforestation, and how that's impacting biodiversity and extinction and species loss. And the third one is around the ocean and cryosphere in a changing climate. So next slide, please. So this recent report is important for several reasons. So this is the IPCC report that will serve as the new scientific basis for future climate negotiations. So effectively, since the assessment cycle takes around 6 to 7 years to be completed, effectively this is the last comprehensive report that we have, while scientists think that it is still feasible to stay within the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. And this is the target wherein it's still considered a safe environment. But once we cross the 1.5 degrees Celsius, that's where impacts can become more irreversible, and even adaptation will become very much harder. So as I said, the next assessment cycle will be concluded in another 5 to 7 years. It will begin this July 2023, but it will be completed beyond 2030. So this report also reduces thousands of pages around the science and several reports already combined in one. So it's a shorter format with a summary for policymakers, which is agreed by the governments engaging in the UNFCCC process. So this this report also will inform the next climate summit, COP28, and the global stocktake. So the global stocktake is a process wherein countries will then review how we are progressing against the Paris Agreement targets. So this piece of report is robust, and it's written by scientists representing different countries across the globe. But just to note that the summary for policymakers, the document text is approved and it's haggled by governments as well. So what you will find in the summary for policymakers are the key agreed steps and next actions, climate actions that countries have signed up to. Yeah. So next slide, please. So this report is being referred to as a final warning from the IPCC for humanity to make the drastic and necessary changes in order to avoid irreversible damage to our planet. So one of the key messages of the report is that climate change is affecting every region on Earth, with many of its impacts already being felt by people and ecosystems. So animals in particular are at risk of extinction or severe habitat loss due to the changing climate. So the IPCC also emphasized in the synthesis report that the current pace and scale of climate action are insufficient to tackle climate change. So now they've really made a statement that given the emissions and the target commitments, global warming will indeed increase further in the near term, so within 2030 to 2040. And it is likely that we will overshoot 1.5 from 2030 to 2035 if we're unable to make more rapid and more immediate reductions in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So just to illustrate how gargantuan is the task ahead of us is to keep within the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit, emissions need to be reduced by at least 43% by 2030 compared to 2019 levels, and at least 60% by 2035. So that emissions reduction is really, really massive. And therefore all sectors need to make transformative changes to contribute to this reduction and achieve a climate safe future for us and animals, of course. So the report also shows that we know that there are multiple feasible and effective options to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to adapt to human-caused climate change. So these policy pathways, these climate actions have already been reviewed in terms of their cost effectiveness, and the IPCC report lays down several mitigation options that have significant potential. So it's really up to governments to take up these policy actions and create the pathways towards reducing the emissions. Next slide, please. So right now, where are we and where do we need to go? So you will see in this graph, the current commitments of countries across the globe is in the red side of the graph in the chart that you will see. And if in a business as usual scenario, given those commitments, we will likely reach 3.2 degrees by the year 2100. And that really means that coral reefs are all gone. And it's really going to be a catastrophic scenario for everyone. And where we need to go is in the blue side of things, the 1.5 degrees Celsius. And that's in the near term. When we say near term in the IPCC, they're really looking at the 2030 to 2040 timeframe. And that's how much emissions need to reduce. So as the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez put it, our world needs climate action on all fronts, everything, everywhere, all at once. So again, as I said earlier, the solutions are out there, but we have to work collectively to transform not just fossil fuels, because we do know that the conversation on climate change can be very much a discussion on fossil fuels. But this time around, the call is really to look at all sectors and decarbonize those sectors. There's food, transport, manufacturing systems, and so on. So we have that rapidly closing window, and we need to take action in the immediate time. Next slide, please. So what does the IPCC say? What did it include as suggested areas of action in the summary for policymakers? So they mentioned that a shift to sustainable healthy diets will be very important. They also emphasize that there needs to be a strong, rapid, and sustained reduction in methane emissions. There's a mention around adaptation strategies, around reducing food loss and waste, and also supporting balanced, sustainable, healthy diets. They also made a mention of agroecology as an adaptation solution as well. They also included the term sustainable agricultural intensification as a possible mitigation action, which can reduce ecosystem conversion and methane and nitrous oxide emissions and free up land for reforestation ecosystem restoration. So during the approval process, we know that many of the NGOs that were represented on the ground really tried to to speak out against sustainable agricultural intensification, just because it's again bringing in new terminology that can potentially be misunderstood. The word intensification in itself there can be used by yeah big agribusiness as an excuse to further intensify agriculture. And the last one is around accelerated technology deployment, leading to avoided and in some cases reduced or removed emissions. So this is now things around like carbon offsets and similar options around carbon reduction. Next slide, please. In summary, so we're trying to look at what are the positives that have come out of this and also the negatives there. So we do appreciate this stronger call for rapid, deep, and immediate reductions, including in the food sector, because that really provides us an entry point to tackle industrial animal agriculture and the cruelty and suffering that is happening within that. Second is that there's support for agroecological principles and practices. And so we can therefore call the further support that goes into these types of food systems. And there's also a very strong call for healthy and sustainable diets. So you will note that the terminology is healthy and sustainable diets as opposed to like plant-based diets. This has a history in a previous IPCC report as well, where big beef producing countries like Brazil and Argentina really lobbied the IPCC to remove mentions of plant-based diet or meat reduction as part of the final text. So it's now this is now how the IPCC refers to it: healthy and sustainable diets. On the negative side, as I mentioned earlier, there's this vague and loosely defined sustainable agricultural intensification. We found a report back in 2019 that refers to this, but it's really it hasn't really gotten into much of the debates in the climate negotiations, but has remained in the text. So it's something that we're hoping to continue speaking out against, given limited science and evidence that supports it. Second is there are recommendations from the previous reports in the same cycle that have been left out in the summary. So the working group 3 report, which was released in April 2022, mentions the potential of alternative proteins as well as meat reduction. But as you will see now, that has been edited out by governments in this current summary for policymakers. Next slide, please. So these are just to share some of like our initial reaction to the IPCC message. And we've formed that around 3 key thematic messages. So around a stronger call for rapid, deep, and immediate reductions across all sectors, then this gives us an opportunity to demand governments to really tackle emissions from industrial animal agriculture. All governments need to enhance their climate commitments through their nationally determined contributions. It's what's it's called, NDCs. And so we can then lobby or do some advocacy with governments around enhancing their agriculture related NDCs. And the second is there is a new joint work that was established as part of the Sharm el Sheikh COP27 decision, which this joint work really looks at agriculture and food security. And we hope to work with that Sharm el Sheikh joint work to recognize also the link between animal agriculture and climate change. And hopefully through that process also we can take steps to hold polluters in the agribusiness sector to account, especially those who have net zero commitments. So looking at their emissions more closely and how they're holding up as regards these commitments. And of course, there's halting deforestation and conversion of land. Um, the second is around the idea of sustainable agriculture intensification. And we would like to say that this is not the answer. Again, given that the urgency to act within the near term, 2030 to 2040, is here and now, and the actions need to be taken, we need concrete and widely understandable methodologies to move forward. And introducing new terminologies, new approaches such as this will just delay action even further. So we feel that there is a need to debunk this concept using evidence from various research and highlight that technologies proposed are not yet fully proven effective, and it only disincentivizes further action um, uh, to really look at and address industrial animal agriculture. Second point there is around encouraging dietary shifts, including plant-based proteins. The third point is around climate justice, and it's really drawing the point that high meat consuming countries should curb their appetite for factory farmed meat, and thus there is an opportunity to also like work with global south countries, especially the most climate vulnerable ones, to collectively call out industrial agriculture. So we we see that industrial animal agriculture and big agribusiness players have long hidden in the shadow, behind the shadow of like fossil fuel actors. But this needs to change now that we are in a very we have a short window, or a short narrowing window for us to really meet our climate targets or stay within the safe 1.5 degrees. And also around climate justice, definitely is around stopping multilateral development banks financing for factory farms, as well as redirecting that financing towards exploring more just, humane, and sustainable food system food system production approaches. Yeah. And on the last slide, so we also just compiled some reactions from different governments around the IPCC. And we can see here, for example, Brazil with its new government and new climate change secretary. She was saying that deforestation is their number 1, 2, and 3 priority for mitigation. So this is, while this is encouraging, we also know that in a recent business visit that President Lula had to China, JBS, one of the largest meat producers, was part of their delegation. So there's still really the strong legacies of like agribusiness lobby there, but it's good to see some of these statements coming out already. Yeah, so maybe we'll share these slides after so you can look at the other reactions from various governments. But definitely there's a stronger call to decarbonize all sectors. And this conversation today, as mentioned by Than, thinking about the climate vulnerabilities that Asia and the Pacific region as well is facing, and taking into account these findings, how can we then open up the conversation here in Asia around climate change, factory farming, and what it means to us and the animals that we are seeking to protect as well. With that, I'll hand back over to Than. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angel, for the like very detailed explanation of the IPCC report and what's included. So as you all can see from the Angel's presentation, is actually needed to be taken by everyone, everywhere at the same time and at once. It's a really big task, as Angel mentioned, and as the report said. So it means like every one of us and every NGO in the sector, and particularly the NGOs working on animal welfare and climate change, we need to be more vocal. We need to take stronger action to be able to tackle the threats, the risk. It's now open for us to discuss because as Andrew mentioned, and we all recognize as well, Asia is where it's one of the biggest meat producer in the world. We are feeding the world as well, so we are playing a big role in the food industry. At the same time, many of the countries in Asia continents are facing the high risk of global climate change and the rising sea levels, and therefore we are in more urgent position to take action. So with that being said, it's now open for us to contribute the idea of how we as a group of in Asia to propose for avoid or take any action in the near future and long-term future for the changes that we want to see. Yeah, but before we go into the discussion, is there any questions if any of you have for Angel from related to the report? You're welcome to open your mic and answer.
Yes.
Sorry.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, I have a question.
Shujana, yeah. Please
yes.
go.
So the global south countries, I think, are already the biggest producers of, animal-based meat. If you see, like India or South Asia, we produce so many shrimp, fishes. There are huge numbers of cattle in India, and across if we see Southern America, they are biggest producers of beef. So like the speaker said, that this global south countries can lobby for reduction. I How will they, why would they lobby? Because they are the biggest producers.
Yep. Thank you for that comment and feedback, Surjana. So when I said the global south countries, really focusing on those that are part of the climate vulnerable countries. So I think by focusing on the climate vulnerable countries within the global south, because they are the ones that are really affected by climate change, and they can be considered the affected communities, then they will have like a stronger voice when they lobby the UNFCCC around changes that need to be made. So, but agree with your point that there is really a growing footprint of meat production, and also we're seeing signs of like factory farming also growing in Asia, and therefore the step is really to also think about how, because these are offshored emissions that since in the global north they don't want to expand there anymore, they are expanding their footprint here, and also and therefore there needs to be some steps that need to be made in terms of these imported emissions that they are bringing to the global south. So I think there are two sides to that, but definitely that's a good point to bear in mind. And I think Vince, as part of the discussion around the statement, will lay down some ideas around that. Yeah, thanks for that, Surjana.
Thank you very much, Sujana and Angel. And yeah, Vince, I saw your hands up.
Thank you. Sorry. I just would like to ask quickly, Angel, to go back quickly around sustainable intensification, and how is this being perceived just for everybody, right? How is this being perceived? When did it actually started? And what are the current position of government towards it? Just to, a sort of like inform everybody when we talk about sustainable intensification as not the solution.
Mm.
Thanks.
Yeah, so this when we were trying to dig up further into this, because when you will see in the current synthesis report summary for policymakers, there's not even a footnote used to describe it, or some referencing referencing to describe which reports it's referring to. So we did look at other IPCC reports that mention sustainable agricultural intensification, and we can also share this to the group later, a link. But it's in the 2019 report, which covers climate change and land, and it's still an idea at that point, and there are some countries that have already used the idea, this notion of sustainable agricultural intensification. But again, as civil society actors, those that engaged in the IPCC, especially Climate Action Network, they were saying that it's not a it's another terminology that is not globally known and agreed, and so we need to speak out against it. When you look at the proceedings document, interestingly, there has been not as much um, discussion on removing that text from governments. It seemed to be like accepted based on the proceedings document, because in the proceedings document you will see that, for example, if a certain country proposed changes to a particular term or text, but for this particular section there were none as such. So we think that this proceeded without much challenge from governments, but more coming from civil society. So yeah, that's what we know so far, Vince, on this. And yeah, even us as World Animal Protection, we're trying to look into this further, because it's because I think that we already have terms like sustainable agriculture or unsustainable agriculture, but to have something quite hybrid, sustainable agricultural intensification, yeah, it's a bit, yeah, mysterious. I think we still find it quite mysterious. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Angel. And does anyone have any further questions related to the report or in general? All right, so yeah, that's I think we can move to the next part in like a contribution from everyone about like how we can take this with the information that we had. I know it's a lot to comprehend and to like digest in such a short time, but I mean, then we hear quite a lot about the link between the factory farming and the climate change already. So let's discuss on how we can work as a group and as representative from Asian countries to tackle this. It's now open for any comment.
I'll give a comment here.
Yep.
Especially regarding, I am talking in an Indian context, because India also has a lot of cattle population. We are trying to reduce, and we also have an issue of stray cattle, because cow is a holy animal, and we have anti-cow slaughter laws in India across the states. One of the things that we are lobbying for is, the sex sorted semen to reduce stray cattle, because most of the stray cattle is either spent or, male calves, which are left on the roads. Because we have been thinking of solutions for stray cattle issue, and because methane production is mostly through, the cattle. Then also, another issue that we have in India is the productivity of cattle is very low. So, the introduction of breeds that can be more productive, so it can reduce the head count. Right now, on an average in India, the cattle average, I'm saying, the average production, I think, is something 2 kg to 3 kg. Whereas if you see across the world in, the countries which have better breeds, the head count is less, but the production is more. So maybe for cattle, I think it would be, good to think in that manner, because India is a rural economy still, and a lot of people, they depend on selling milk as one of the sources of livelihood. So completely eliminating or reducing will also require some strategies. So these were the two things that we have been thinking of and lobbying with the government. The sex sorted semen, this technology is already there, and a lot of states are trying to reduce the male calf population and male calves on the streets. So that is going on, though with little success of that process of inseminating that semen and the outcomes. Sometimes there are problems, as I have understood, but maybe if there are any solutions, if anyone has some ideas around this, I would love to hear.
Thank you, Sujana. I think that's yeah, it's good to know that those are the issues that you're facing in India, and I'll leave it open to anybody who want to comment or brainstorming a solution for that. But as a coalition, AFA is more than willing to support your any action of yours. If you, and maybe we can reach out to other members within network as well. Maybe we could put together an appeal letter to the government or to the corporate business, if there's space for that, and if it is the way to go. But yeah, it's please, everybody, if you have any recommendation for Shijana and the issues that if there's having in India, yes, please suggest. Okay. And I think it's a part of the bigger issue as well, when you look into the Asia as a whole, as a continent. It's a part of the agricultural industry. Right. So next part, I would like for Vince to come up and introduce what the key elements in the public statements, because as presented in Angel presentation, the governments in multiple countries and multiple NGOs had already put out their statement about the IPCC report. And as a subgroup, the policy subgroup for Asia, and for AfA, representing the a united voice for Asia, we want to for the policy subgroup to have a public statement as well with regard to the IPCC's sixth synthesis report. And Vince, as a leader of the policy subgroup, will present some key elements of the statement, and we would, after Vince introduced the key elements, there's a space for everyone to comment or maybe have an input in this. And yeah, if before we send out the statement to the press. Okay. Yeah, Vince, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Stan. Not so sure if you are going to share some of the key points. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for your participation today. Today's conversation builds on the previous Asia Protein Summit that we organized last year with 50 by 40, basically to engage COP27. We did come out with a communique. I'm going to share in the chat, and then you can also see some of the signatories. We used it to engage COP27 last year. And then this is also building further on the topic of the first AfA Farm Animal Day, around the intersections of building back better a few years ago, together with WWF 350 Animal Protection Organization, and then some social enterprising groups. As you're aware, as mentioned by Than and Angel as well, the Policy Working Group of Farm Animal Coalition under AfA would like to propose that we use the IPCC report as an opportunity to make known our position on factory farming and climate change. Right? We also would like to use that position to network and engage key global moments as a platform to leverage our engagement with governments and most likely some of our corporate targets. So some of these key global moments we're talking about, as an example, is the IPCC report, upcoming COP28, and then if you'd like to engage G20, it's also an opportunity for us to do that. We are going to use that as an opportunity on our ask to engage around farm animal welfare and humane and sustainable protein. There's also an upcoming Sustainable Food Systems Conference in Vietnam in the coming weeks, but maybe Tan or Angel can talk about it later. We would like to use that as an opportunity to engage. If anybody is interested, we are going to share the link if you'd like to attend that. Again, as a background, we would like to approach our engagement using an Asian lens to put a halt on the further expansion of factory farming systems, considering that Asia is the largest meat producing region, accounting for around 45% of total meat production, as mentioned by Tan, and this will significantly grow in the production of pork and poultry forecast over the next 10 years. So meaning as mentioned, these are offshore production coming from the global north, relocating their production in the global south. So there's an opportunity for us to really protect Asia from the growth of factory farming, and then addressing the vulnerability to climate change. Though countries in Asia are highly impacted by the effects of climate change, we also play a key role in the achievement of climate targets. No? As a fast-growing part of the global economy, Asia has the ability to lead the way towards a food systems transformation that could potentially meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. The science is clear about the role of industrialized animal agriculture in the climate emergency, and now again is the time for global concerted action. As mentioned by the IPCC report, governments have promised to meet the Paris Climate Agreement target to limiting the planet to a 1.5 degrees Celsius. However, we can't do this without tackling factory farming. So the key elements of our statement are as follows. One, as mentioned, we need to affirm the vulnerability of Asia to climate impacts. We have a vital role to play in achieving climate targets. As mentioned in there, Asia is one of the most vulnerable regions in the world to climate impact. And then aside from being one of the biggest meat producing region, offshored most of this, accounting to around 45% of total meat production. So there's an opportunity for us on how we are going to push in, a humane, sustainable food systems in producing our food. Second element of our statement as follows. The importance of stopping the expansion of factory farms. The governments, again, we need to recognize that factory farming is fueling climate change, releasing volumes of greenhouse gases. So basically, there is a need to curb the growth of factory farming by introducing sort of like a moratorium on factory farming. We would like to emphasize that factory farming, it's not the only single biggest source of animal cruelty, but is also one of the biggest greenhouse gas contributors that intensify climate change. As mentioned by Angel, some of our concrete actions, we can call on the governments on the need to include agriculture or food systems related commitments as part of their NDC, or nationally determined contributions, to achieve the climate goals laid out in the Paris Agreement. Important thing around this, as a while ago, this needs to be in the context of just transition. There needs to be to stop the expansion of factory farming and transition towards a just, humane, and sustainable system where everyone has access to safe, nutritious, and affordable proteins produced within environmental boundaries. It's also important for us to, when we talk about factory farming, we also need to recognize production and consumption. There needs to be an adoption to have the animal protein production and consumption by 2040. And this needs to start in high meat consuming countries and high meat producing companies to reverse the destructive impact of land use changes and deforestation caused by livestock and feed production impacting biodiversity and human health. So basically, this is what we are trying to say, the 4 pillars of our statement that we would like to use and engage networks, including the media. Just to make sure, again, that differentiating this from low meat consuming countries, right? That's why we are stating categorically that the reduction of production and consumption needs to start in the global north, in the high meat consuming countries, and then targeting high meat producing companies, because we recognize that low income countries really suffer from hunger and malnutrition and food inequality and should have access to sufficient and higher welfare animal protein. So in these countries, again, in the global south, there's an opportunity for us to ensure that no new factory farms are being used to feed community. Communities are fed through just, humane, and sustainable methods. For example, this is regenerative agriculture and agroecology within planetary limits as examples that we can employ. So this is some of the key 4 points that we are planning to share back to you and then develop further in the coming days. Thank you. Thank you, Tan.
Thank you very much, Vince. And I'm sorry for my screen is keep moving. Yes, that's the 4 key elements that we want to give out as a statement representing the Asian voice from NGOs. I will circulate this later to everyone who attend the webinar today and for your comments. And but if you have any further contribution now today, just feel free to open the mic and let us know. Just a quick check if there's any further comments here now.
I want to understand. Yeah, these statements. This is wonderful statements that we want to put out. But I think there is a link between why the global South countries are producing so much. Most of it is for export purposes, and also. If we see why they are, the first is export purposes. The second is that the governments in the South, they promote animal agriculture in any way, like fisheries or cattle milk production, by giving out subsidies. So now in India we see to alleviate poverty. So I think something we should also think about, that what can be the alternate sources of livelihood, because in this global South, the sources. Hello. These are mainly the sources of livelihood and have been promoted as such.
Yep. Thank you, Srijana. Vince, do you have any comments for Srijana's comment?
No, I think that's a really good point. I think we can include in there part of our articulation when we call on governments, and then when we mention about divesting their support away from factory farming. This could include supporting smallholders on how we can scale up agroecology or regenerative agriculture, right, within planetary limits. Definitely, there's a space for that within our statement.
Yep. Thank you, Vince. And also, as part of the statement, Srijana, there's the just transition. We are going to call for the government to invest into sustainable and alternative to animal agriculture as well. So I think it could be part of the solution or the answer to your concerns. Okay, I'll stop screen. Oh, thank you very much. And is there any further comments or contribution here?
I think it's Ting.
Yes, Ting, please.
Hi, I'm Ting Yu from Taiwan, and I just wanted to share. And we campaigned to add plant-based promoting in climate bill last year, and we successfully the bill passed third reading on the January 10th, and with low carbon diet in the bill. But after the bill passed, the EPA just proposed 12 strategies for net zero, and they're putting the diet change in the after 2031 in their program. So I just wanted to push back the work on the plant-based diet. So that might be our next advocacy or lobbying goal. So we just want to ask if there is anyone want to join us, or maybe we can have some international work together and to have some pressure to the government. And I also want to know what's our next steps
Yes.
in our Asia context. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Tinyu. That's our next part. Will be we will like offer the next step for everyone to want to involve. But firstly, if East have any activity or campaign that you want support from a wider like network like AFA, and particularly if related to policy, then we have the policy subgroup within the Farm Animal Coalition. We can support you, and we normally send appeal letters to the government or to corporates. So if you have any like clear request to call for and clear target, like particular either it's government at a central level or district or even corporate, then we could support your activity there as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
And then the next step, yeah, we will, let me share my screen and hope this works. So there are some next steps that we proposed. It's for us to, first of all, recognize the role of the factory farming towards climate change and animal welfare. And we can, by recognizing it, we will take into action, like either through our campaign or to reduce the factory farming, the plan to expand, or even like stop financing the factory farming in your country or in the whole continent. And we can join joint action to call for Asian government to demand a stop of investing into factory farming and stop further expansion of factory farming in those countries. And secondly, to develop and support the implementation of a just, humane, sustainable transition to agriculture, moving away from factory farms. And thirdly, to adopt a goal to halve the animal protein production and consumption by 2040, and to in order to reverse the destructive impact of land use change and deforestation caused by the livestock and feed production. And with that, we will prepare. We can prepare a letter, but as a network, we can support your campaign and to call for others, all the members to in AFA network to join the letter, to co-sign the letter, and send it to the government. But we need your help in where you're based to like to address, to act on our behalf, to communicate with the government or corporates. But we will share later like a draft letter, so you can review and you can decide whether you want to join us and take action. And as Vince mentioned, we will take this opportunity to socialize our position in the upcoming Sustainable Food System Summit in Hanoi, Vietnam later this year, and to circulate our statement through media channels and ensure that it's covered. If you have, like, we will share our statement, and because the particular Sustainable Food System Summit is happening in Vietnam, we will share it here, but we would appreciate your spreading the word to any media outlet that you know in the country, because it's this statement is one that is act as a united voice from NGOs working on farm animal and climate change in Asia. And we call for stronger collaboration among us, among all the NGOs and groups working in the continent, to join AFA and particularly the Farm Animal Coalition to act as an united voice to call out for industrial agriculture to transit away from factory farming and mitigate the risk that's as presented in the report. So that's our next step. Yeah, if you have any comments or contribution, again, feel free to add. Thank you. first, any question, any contribution here?
Tan, just quickly, because there's a question. I've shared some of our detailed reports around climate change and cruelty in the chat, and then I've also added the scorecard, because I think Monique was asking on different animal intensive farming, but this one we're basically ranking top meat producing companies, but maybe there's an aggregated information and data there. And thank you again. We hope that the Farm Animal Coalition will have some of these colleagues there in the conversation. Yeah, I'm also curious if there's anybody else that would like to ask us some of the questions. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Vince. And yeah, as Vince mentioned, if you have any question, Tingyu, please.
I just think about maybe we can, is it any possible if we can call for the Asian government to establish a cross-governmental climate change response organization? Is it possible? Or maybe, and I just thinking, because in Taiwan and the government, they don't want to recognize the impact of food system livestock on climate change. So I think it's very important for the government to recognize and to educate publics.
Yeah, I think yes, we definitely can work as a team, as a coalition to let the government know. I think maybe for us, the first step is to let the government know that we are aware of the commitment, and maybe check with do a research and check if Taiwan government is a member of the IPCC report of the UN, and it's whether the IPCC report has bind Taiwan government with the regulation or with the targets that in the report. And then if it is, then we can lobby to them, or we can send letter to them saying, so this is what the reports based on the scientific data, and there's a link between factory farming and the climate change as a first step. And then we'll be happy to be guided by you to the next step, but then we can take the step as presented as our coalition as a guidance as well. And Vince, please.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I have a response?
Sure.
Yeah, and I just you can see in the chat box we have our press conference, the press release in the chat box. Yeah, so we talked to the government, and we used the IPCC and UNEP UN their report and scientific evidence. So I think Taiwan is not a part of the IPCC, but we have our NDC. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that they know this evidence. They just don't want to recognize.
Yep. If there's any suggestion or comments on here, then you're more than welcome to open your mic. But in the meantime, Vince.
Thank you so much. Before I'm going to respond to Tingyu, which is a valid point. I think within us at World Animal Protection, I think there's an opportunity for us to engage the upcoming COP28, which is going to be happening towards the end of the year. And then that could also be potentially, we can engage within the Farm Animal Coalition, the policy working group, and with other working group as well. Because I think earlier Maho was here. She's leading the corporate engagement. I mean, Jeff, in compassion and modern farming. So maybe we can do a joint activity together towards that. basically lumping up our government engagement, business engagement, and then humane and sustainable protein, as mentioned by Tingyu, on how we can amplify, how our network can leverage that point as well. Yeah, that's a good point. We can basically provide like information on how some of the timelines as well, especially if these global governments are going to be. I know there's political dynamics as mentioned by Ting, but we are going to put that as a consideration, right? Because every position is really important. But I'm just also interested to hear back from Abby Valenzuela, and then maybe she can also perhaps introduce her organization.
Hey everyone. So I'm a friend of Vince, and I would like to thank him for inviting me here. Actually, right now I'm an independent consultant, and my research focus is on sustainable production and consumption. But I also used to work for a regional NGO working on food systems. But the focus of the NGO and also of my research currently is on crop cultivation and not really animal production. So when you mentioned about agricultural intensification, what first came to my mind was the Dutch model, that is vertical agriculture. So improving agricultural productivity in a limited space using state-of-the-art technology. So my question is if you considered that, because I understand your wariness with regards to intensification or agricultural intensification, but I wonder if you've considered the Dutch model and other such sustainable agricultural intensification approaches or models.
Sure. Angel?
Yeah. Hi, Abby. Thanks for that. So right now we're still really reviewing it further. As you said, most of what we've seen has been around crops and less around animals in the context of sustainable agricultural intensification. So, yeah, if you have other references that you can share that looks into animals as well, that would be great for us to have and take a look at. Yeah, but for now, yeah, it's something that we're trying to look into further. Yeah.
Thanks. No, I just came across that article that I shared in the chat. It's about the multi-story pig farm, right? So this could be used as a model for sustainable intensification, but let's see, this is really, really bad as well. But yeah, thank you for that. Dan?
Yeah, thank you, Vince, and thank you, Abby. And yes, Andrew mentioned, like, please share with us any reference that you can find, and for us, we'll be more than happy to work as well. And if you together, and if you could work with, you want to work with us, then I'll reach out to you and